Hello guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for my team selector and preview ahead of tomorrow's big game against West Ham in the Premier League. It's a massive game in the context of the Premier League season, the top four race. It's a showdown for that Champions League qualification, and I think it's a game Chelsea need to win. As I'll get into, I think Chelsea's form is really concerning in the Premier League, at least in the last 3 or 4 games. Games that Chelsea should have got a lot more points out of, in my opinion, to put us in a better position going into this game. But what's nice is just being able to speak about on the pitch matters again, because we've spent all week discussing things off the field for obvious reasons. And I felt sorry for Tuchel and his players because the brilliant win against Man City was overshadowed very quickly. And the performance on Tuesday, I think I can excuse the team for that on Tuesday, to be honest, in a lot of ways, because the circumstances surrounding it, the preparation being all about off the field matters, I could understand that. But it's a big game now, it really is. And hopefully everyone can focus their minds on this, get behind the team, and let's hope for a big win. Before we get into team news, looking at West Ham and my lineup before the game, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content, because it helps out the channel as well. So team news, Thomas Tuchel confirming that Mateo Kovacic is still out. He did say that he expects he could be back next weekend against Fulham, but this injury that started off as not that serious has taken Kova out for a bit more than we expected. And at this time of the season, it's so crucial. And given that Tuchel in the Premier League and the Champions League has really only used 3 players in a double six, and it went under the radar that he used Mason in the double six on Tuesday night against Brighton. I don't expect that to happen again. One of those things that was a massive, I think, occurrence, just like Kepa starting in goal, but given everything around it, those two things sort of, as I say, get past us by. I think if in normal circumstances, I would have really been delving into those decisions by Tuchel. But we'll have to see what he does tomorrow. But that does put increased pressure and in terms of keeping both N'Golo Kante and Jorginho fit. And even if Billy Gilmour, is ready, I think it's still quite obvious that Gilmour's not going to be trusted in a game to be in that double six, at least for now. So it seems like only 2 players at the moment are more likely to feature and start in a position that they've thrived in, and that's both Kante and Jorginho, who played so well against Man City last weekend. This is the biggest game of the season. West Ham have done incredibly. They really have this year. I mean, I look silly, as I think a lot of us do. You could watch the video. I'm not going to hide it, not going to delete it. You can go back and watch my Premier League predictions where I predicted the whole table. And I flat out said that I think I even predicted West Ham to go down. I think I put them in like 18th, I think it was. I think I put them in the bottom 3, or at least just around that area, because of the turmoil, and the feeling of fan discontent surrounding West Ham. What David Moyes has done with that team this year, I think he should be manager of the season, no matter what Pep does in terms of winning the league. I think David Moyes is manager of the season. Even if he doesn't get top 4, I think the way he's transformed that team, the way he's got them so unified, the style of play, so many good players, it's such a good system. I think the way, of course, Declan Rice, but look at Declan Rice, who luckily for Chelsea isn't available tomorrow, and I think that's a real big miss in the heart of West Ham's midfield. But it's very easy to just look from a Chelsea perspective at a player like Declan Rice, but there are so many components to this team that are so impressive. And also bringing in Jesse Lingard was a stroke of genius. What an incredible end to the season he is having. He's still fit for this game, but Craig Dawson serves a 1-match ban after getting a second yellow against Newcastle last weekend, as well as Declan Rice being out. Michail, who I think is a brilliant player for West Ham, really good striker, and Masuaku are not expected to be available. Of course, they lost last time to Newcastle. Jesse Lingard, in terms of being their top goal scorer, only arriving in January. I mean, it just proves that sometimes players need to move environments. Sometimes a player in a certain environment like Man United, where he wasn't getting opportunities. He's spoken out this week about his mental health issues during the first lockdown. And it's great when players in his position can speak about that, because I think it's a real important issue to bring up. But it shows you where he was like this time last year and how much he's grown since then, and being in a good environment where he's getting that football. And he looks like an incredible player at the moment. He is an inspirational figure to that West Ham side. But that West Ham side, it fights for each other. There's a feeling that they are going upwards in sort of momentum at the moment. And tomorrow is their biggest game in many years. It really is. For them, it is a cup final. And I think just like for Brighton on Tuesday, the events of this week are going to galvanise teams against Chelsea now who aren't a part of the top six. And I think we just have to understand it. There's going to be a sense of reality to that. And it's about Thomas Tuchel and his team really stepping up to that. What's interesting tactically is that West Ham, of course, with no Declan Rice, with no Antonio, sort of at times going with a false nine formation, really looking, they could match up Chelsea tomorrow based on their last formation. As you see, hit the 3-4-1-2. So a slight difference to Chelsea. Sometimes we can look like this formation where Mason's playing and dropping a little bit deeper. Jesse Lingard being the big goal threat, of course, but Jared Bowen has been such a wonderful signing for West Ham since he arrived from Hull last year. The guy, the acceleration, the movement, his ability to find pockets of space, and it's West Ham's ability. They have shipped a lot of goals, which I think is good for Chelsea. Just looking at the stats, they've conceded 10 goals in their last 4 Premier League games, so that's something Chelsea will want to exploit tomorrow. They've really struggled to keep goals out, and I think that's a big thing going into the remainder of the season. You know, a bit like Chelsea last year defensively, we conceded so many goals, and it was such a big Achilles heel for us that cost our brilliant attack, and that seems what it is for West Ham currently. And can Chelsea try and, you know, be resolute, keep that structure defensively, and try and hit West Ham on the counter? You know, the way Newcastle were able to exploit West Ham on a consistent basis on the counter, I think Thomas Tuchel will look to do that. I think he will look to do what he has done in a lot of big games. I think he'll look to build off and trust the structure, the defensive structure that has served him so well, that has been the biggest improvement since he arrived in January. I think Chelsea, and then that comes to the personnel who you may start up top. I think Tuchel in this kind of game will look to counter. I think he will. I think he'll look to use the pace. I think the way we exploited Man City last week, of course, very different side, very different methodology of the way they go about things. But, you know, I still think West Ham will want to be proactive in this game. They're going to want to attack Chelsea, and Chelsea's ability then to counter on that, stay resolute defensively, prevent spaces for players like Jesse Lingard, who has been so devastating when he's got space to exploit defences. I think that's a big thing. I think Tuchel will look at that and try and steal this game on the counter, get those fine margins right in both boxes, which he has. In terms of the lineup, he's confirmed that Edouard Mendy will start this game. Kepa Arrizabalaga starting the previous 2 games, so of course starting against Man City and Brighton. A massive surprise. I think the bigger surprise was Man City, but then of course starting against Brighton as well. Another thing, as I said earlier, sort of got swept under the carpet, and there's been some debate recently because he's kept so many clean sheets for Thomas Tuchel. I don't think he's conceded a goal yet when Kepa has played. So there was some debate, could he start this game? But no, Edouard Mendy going to be back in goal once again, the Premier League keeper for the main Chelsea's first choice this season. And I think there's a debate around, you know, does Kepa start the cup final against Leicester? But I think Mendy, of course, guaranteed to start this game. And then I give you my 2 lineups. Once again, I think the good thing about Chelsea under Tuchel now is a majority of the team, I think we know what it's going to be most of the time. You know, I know he did a little bit more rotation against Brighton on Tuesday. I think that was a quick turnaround between City and Brighton. I think you'll see a lot more a team that we've become used to in this game because it's such an important game. I fully expect that Ben Chilwell will come back in at left wing back. I think getting that rest he needed against Brighton for Marcus Alonso. Reece James at right wing back. I know on Tuesday he did switch over to left wing back, of course. A crazy occurrence that just made Tuesday even more weirder, to be honest. But as you see with my first lineup, very much the lineup we saw against, I think it's the exact lineup we saw with the exception of Mendy for Kepa, of course, against Man City last weekend. And there's a reason why I've picked this starting a lineup that is going to be a bit more resolute, is going to try and hit West Ham on the counter using the pace of Timo Werner and the way both Werner and Ziyech combined last weekend. It almost looked at times last weekend that Ziyech was the actual forward and Timo Werner was on the left, as he usually is, and that was an interesting dynamic for me. Hakim Ziyech, of course, started midweek. Timo Werner came off the bench. I wouldn't be surprised if Werner comes back in here because the two combined so well to score the winning goal against Man City. So that could be one way you go about it. I think the way Mount, Ziyech and Werner have combined, if you remember against Liverpool, another big away game back in March where we won 1-0, I thought that front three worked well together on that occasion too. So it's a front three that can be used if Chelsea are looking to be a little bit more defensive and spring on the counter. I think those 3 players with their movement, with their intelligence and with Werner's pace in particular can really hurt defences on transition. position. So potentially he could go for that. And Kante and Jorginho have been so resolute. I thought their performance last week was so good. And I think that, just resting these players, giving them the opportunity to rest and recuperate is such a big part of the season. Of course, Andreas Christensen, back from injury, had another clean sheet the other night. I mean, I think Brighton should have won that game, but, Christensen racking up the clean sheets under Thomas Tuchel. But Thiago Silva, too, ready for this game again after getting that midweek rest. Does he come back into that defence alongside Dave and Rudiger? I do think Dave and Rudiger will be two of the back three, as we always have this debate, who's that middle. The second lineup sort of switches up certain elements. So once again, we have Dave, Christensen and Rudiger as the back three, which is still Thomas Tuchel's most used back three. Callum Hudson-Odoi at right wing back. Of course, he came off the bench midweek with Timo Werner. Didn't have a lot of time to influence the game. I still wonder, for a game of this magnitude, I think that Tuchel will look more defensively. So I think he will prioritise Reece James. We've seen what Callum can do in this position, especially against Crystal Palace. I just don't think it's that type of game where Chelsea will have that much dominance in possession. I think, say, against Fulham next week, I think that's the type of game where Callum could thrive in that position, where Chelsea are expected to have a lot more of the ball, a lot more territory. I think, you could see potentially Georgie and Cover as a double six working really well to filter the ball left and right. I'm not quite sure in this game defensively if Callum is going to be chosen over Reece James. I prefer Reece James, but there's an idea potentially if Callum was to come into here. And of course, we've always had this concept and belief that potentially he could play further up the pitch, in more of a natural position. But unfortunately, we haven't seen him play there that much, under Tuchel. It seems even now, after a brief sort of look at him in that front three, hasn't happened since. And the front three that could be the alternative to Werner, Ziyech and Mount is Mount, Pulisic and Havertz, the front three that caused havoc against Crystal Palace in Chelsea's last best Premier League performance, one of the best attacking performances we've seen. I just wonder, once again, if Chelsea are looking to be a little bit more defensive. We saw the limitations, or at least the inability of this front three to really be that devastating against Porto in the second leg. Yes, very unique time that. I just think that Christian Pulisic, for me, I can't resist him being involved in this game, because I just think at the moment he's in such good form. Even coming off the bench against Man City, I know his goal was ruled out for offside, but I just feel Pulisic, and of course he did start the other night, but I feel he is coming into that form that you want him, that electric form at this time of the season, where he's finding goals again, which is so key. It could be the difference maker tomorrow for Chelsea. So I know Werner had a really good performance last weekend, but I just think Pulisic, I just would love to see him start. So maybe it's a combination of those two front threes, Pulisic, Ziyech, Mount, potentially Havertz playing as that false nine once again, which Tuchel seems to love. He seems to love a false nine, and he's not bringing back Tammy or Giroud unless he surprises us tomorrow. So I think one of those two, Mount, Pulisic, Havertz, Ziyech, Werner and Mason Mount, could it be one of those two? Could it be a mix of both? Let me know in the comments below what you think about this game, because it's absolutely critical for Chelsea. They need to get a positive result. Yes, we have a better goal difference than West Ham, but we're level on points with them. I think, Chelsea have to be getting that win tomorrow. And something I did mention earlier, we look at those 3 games post the last international break, West Brom at home, Crystal Palace away and Brighton at home. We needed 9 points. We only got 4 points out of those 3 games, which really is terrible. I think Chelsea needed to get maximum points out of those games. Yes, you can look at the Champions League exploits, the FA Cup exploits, but it's why Chelsea have put themselves in such a difficult position, because we have this game, which is so huge, going to be such a difficult test against West Ham, but also beyond the Real Madrid semi-final and Fulham, then it goes into the final 4 games, which are so difficult for Chelsea. They're really going to be a test. They are, Man City away, Leicester's in there, Aston Villa's in there, Arsenal is in there. So it's going to be absolutely intense as we get to the end of the Premier League season. Can Chelsea reach the top 4? Can Chelsea get back to winning ways in the Premier League tomorrow? Let me know your thoughts and your lineups in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this preview. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.